Well, good Thursday morning, everybody. How you doing today? Uh, Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining me with your coffee this morning. My name is Jim Valeri. I have been married for 20 years and have been a counselor for 20 years, and I know a little something about something. A few things, actually. And today I'm going to share with you a little bit I know about screen time with children. Now, before I get into that, I just kind of want to do a little bookkeeping. First of all, I would like to say that it sounds like, from what I've seen, that people really resonated with the grief video I did a few days ago. And so I want to make sure I give more sensitivity to that. And I feel like I didn't scratch the surface on that. My wife had kind of said, it's a big topic. You're just scratching the surface on that. And I said, you know what, you're right. So I'm going to try and talk to a buddy of mine who is an expert in grief. He actually is he's a grief coach, grief counselor. The guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to try and talk to him. I don't want to go and be like, yeah, he's totally going to be on the show, and I haven't even talked to him yet. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to that guy, see if I can get him in and get him talking about this. That one might be like an extended edition of what we're doing here. But yeah, it'll be good. He's a good guy, and I'm going to try and see if I can get him on to kind of talk a little bit more about it, because grief is not exactly my specialty, but it is something I have worked with people on in the past. So I want to make sure I'm sensitive to that. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about screen time with kids. If you are a parent and you have parented in the last 5 years with children over the age of 2, you have probably realized that screen time has kind of been a little bit of a problem. All right. And I secretly blame COVID and how it was handled for this. All right. I am, if you meet me and you talk to me in person, I am pretty unashamed about the way I feel about how COVID was handled and all that. That might make you a little uncomfortable, so I'm not going to get into that today. But I will say this much. COVID created an environment where our kids are on screens, or were on screens, for like 16 hours a day. Okay, because we had to work, we had to kind of manage all this stuff. It was tough. We all had to sort of dance around all of the issues that were coming up as a result of COVID. And the schools had to do this, and we had to do this. It was just getting ridiculous. And so we just got really, really comfortable with our kids being on screens for long periods of time. Now, if you had talked to a doctor a year before, they would have told you, no more than 2 hours screen time. That's it. That's all you can do with kids. And then COVID happened. And it's like, well, let's just throw that out the window, because we've got other things we have to deal with here. And so I just found it was just really, how much of this is actual, like science and stuff like that. So I take a lot of what people say these days, especially the experts, with a grain of salt. Okay, because they were perfectly willing to throw these ideas out the window when it was inconvenient to do otherwise. Anyways, I'm going to stop ranting. I'm going to get into the real topic today. So as a result, like, our kids kind of had this thing with screens. We had to keep them on screens all day to go to school. We had to keep them on screens for entertainment, stuff like that. If you're in the New England area, or if you're up north where it is cold, there's not really a whole heck of a lot to do. So guess what? You're on screens, watching TV, playing video games. It is a lot. Okay, there's a lot of screen time. My wife and I really had some difficulty with this. We had some struggles with this. It was hard because we got to this place where we're like, what are we going to do with these kids? How are we going to keep them busy? So we had to have a real heart-to-heart about it. So once we started homeschooling our kids, we really had to kind of crank down on the screen time and say, you know what? we're going to set boundaries here. You can't have screen time until the other kids are able to, come back from school. So 3 o'clock is the screen time starter. And then what ended up happening was the kids ended up going to bed late because they didn't have to be anywhere. They ended up going to bed later in the day. So they were on screens for like 6-7 hours. It was kind of ridiculous. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, what are we doing here? So my wife said, you know what, this is too much time. We did the math, and it was something like 2 days. 2 days of their lives were on screens. And we're like, this is not okay. So we started coming up with a plan to try and manage this. And we just kind of cut things back a little bit here and there to try and get them cut down on the amount of screen time they did. So we ended up setting some boundaries. So I kind of want to go over some suggestions I have about helping kids with screen time, because it's a big issue that a lot of people struggle with. In fact, I've had couples argue about the amount of screen time that their kids are on. They disagree, and now it becomes an issue in the marriage because they disagree about this. So, number one, if you haven't bought your kids devices yet, if you buy devices for the children, they are yours. All right. You do not give your children devices. They do not own their phone. They do not own their tablet. Okay. When they're older, fine. Okay. Like 16, 17 years old, their phone. Okay, cool. But you still have control over that. All right. But what you want to do is you want to be in a place where you are in control, in ownership of all the screens, and you take them away at will. This is the punishment component is removing the screen time. We'll get into that a little bit later at step 4. So number 2, set a good example. This is something I've struggled with. Historically, I have been glued to my phone looking at junk on the internet, looking at Facebook, or whatever. I will scroll through social media. I will be glued to my phone. And this is an area that a lot of adults struggle with. And I've had kids in the office with me with their parents, and they'll be like, well, Mom, you're on your phone all the time. And the mom's kind of like embarrassed that she just got outed by her kid, that she's on her phone doing screen time. And so then the kids see this hypocrisy, they do, and they bring it up and they use it as a leverage to get more screen time for themselves. So set a good example for kids. Show them that we as adults can set boundaries with our own screen time. And dads, especially, guys, I got a heart for you out there. Same thing, all right? Football, screen time, video games, whatever it is you're doing, set boundaries with yourself, okay? Show your children that there's more to life than sitting around and watching these things and staring at your phone and stuff like that. All right, number 3, set aside an amount of time you are comfortable with. All right, I should slow down a little bit. Set aside an amount of time that you are comfortable with your children doing screen time. Okay, so my wife and I kind of set a boundary. We set a number. Our screen time number is around like 4 hours total a day. All right, and that's because our kids work really hard. They work really hard during the day with their homeschooling. They work really hard during the day with chores. They're not allowed to do screen time or chores until they're not allowed to do screen time until their chores and their schoolwork are done. Okay, that is a boundary. If the schoolwork is not done, if the chores aren't done, screen time gets pushed back. Okay, so we set aside this time. We say, okay, you've got to get these things done, and this is a little bit of a battle. Okay, and this is one that my wife fights many days. Okay, she is a warrior when it comes to these kinds of things because the kids want to go, they want to watch this stuff, and she's got to say, no, your chores aren't done, your school's not done, you don't get this stuff. Okay, now a lot of parents don't want to engage in that. They don't want to have that argument. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. Here, kid, just have the screen. Just leave me alone. Life is hard. Okay, but you want to be able to lean into that. Lean into that struggle. Say no. You know what? I'm not going to let your emotional state impact me. I'm good, man. Like, this is nothing personal. This is just business. Okay, I'm trying to teach you how to be a good adult because ultimately, what's our job as parents? Yes, we want to raise good kids, but the goal is to raise good adults. Okay, so that's number 3. Set aside an amount of time you're comfortable with and don't waver. Be stalwart. Okay, set your boundaries and stick to them. Okay, because if they can maneuver you emotionally, they're gonna do it. And not my kids. Yes, your kids. Yes, my kids. All kids. All kids are very self-focused, very self-motivated. They want these things, and they will. If they can manipulate you emotionally, they will do it. But if you're just like very matter of fact, like, you can cry all you want, man, but it's not happening until you get this stuff done. Once they realize that, once they learn that, it's much easier to just kind of do what you ask them to do, and then they get what they want. Life gets so much easier. And then number 4, don't use screen time as punishment, not as a reward. All right, we don't want to add screen time. So an interesting thing about behavior modification in the time that I've done work as a counselor is that a lot of parents will take one thing, and that's the thing they tweak, which isn't wrong. It's like, well, you get more screen time if you do this, but you get less screen time if you do that. And the problem we run into with this is that if you have a kid who is abysmal all day and their behavior is atrocious, you take away a bunch of screen time. Well, guess what? Now they can earn it back. They just got to do the chores. They got to do the homework. They do a few things. They say some nice things to you, whatever. All of a sudden, they earn the screen time back. And we want to give it to them. We want to say, oh, okay, cool, here you go. Hey, it keeps them quiet. Gives us some downtime, which is great. Okay, but we want to be able to reward them with things that potentially are not screen time. We want to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay you if you do these chores. Hey, we're going to go out here. We're going to go and do something. If you can get all this stuff done, we're going to go hang out. I have no problem paying my children for good behavior. Okay, this is something that I am like completely unashamed of. I will pay my children for good behavior all the time because you know what? If I can pay my kid $5 to behave throughout the week and do everything they're supposed to do, that is money well spent. You know what? Like, what do you take? Cash, check, or credit? Okay. So don't be afraid to kind of set up a reward system that they can earn to do when they're doing the right thing, but there's something to remove for the wrong thing. Maybe I'll do a whole video on behavior modification. I think I should do that because that's kind of a bigger topic. But ultimately, the notion behind maintaining good boundaries with screen time, number one, all devices are yours. The children don't have agency over those devices because you're their parent, and you're literally giving them access to the internet, which I would argue is rated R or worse. So you got to be careful with this. Number two, set a good example. If you want your children to have good boundaries with screen time, you have to set good boundaries with screen time. They are watching you. They're watching what you're doing. All right. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to your own. Take an analysis of your own screen time. Say, how much time am I spending on screens? You know, and cut back. It's okay. The world will still be there if you hang back on screen time. Okay. Number three, set aside, or I should say, set a time that you are comfortable with in giving them screen time. How much screen time do you really want to give them? You want to give them 2 hours? You want to give them 3 hours? Whatever it is. However much time you feel comfortable with. And just own it. Just be like, yep, this is the amount of time I'm giving my kids for screen time. It's totally fine. I'm comfortable with that. Okay. Number four, use screen time as a punishment. Remove it as a punishment, but do something else as a reward. Okay. We don't want to tweak the same thing. Okay. Because then kids learn a system, they figure it out, and then they start, they just do whatever they want, and they get whatever they want too. Okay. So anyways, I hope this video has helped you out a lot. It's something that I've really worked with a lot of parents on, and I've worked in my own family, like our kids, man, they love their screens and it's great, but we try to encourage behaviors and we try to encourage activities that are not necessarily related to screen time, because that's real life. Real life is going and doing stuff and hanging out with people and engaging in things that aren't necessarily screen time. So I want to encourage you that, like, you don't have to be held hostage by your kids. Okay, like, you're the parent, you pay for all this stuff. So be okay with setting boundaries. If you want to talk to me some more about this, I got there's a free call link I'm gonna pop in the comments right now. Bam, there it is. And if you have any comments about this, you want me to talk about this some more, please feel free to put a comment below. And if you're catching this live, great, throw a comment in there. If you're catching it after the live, throw a comment in there and say, hey man, this was really good. This really resonated with me. Can you go deeper? I would love to go deeper if that's what you want me to do. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for sitting here and spending the morning with me. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful Thursday. I will see you tomorrow morning.